please just turn off your videos, although that won't be a problem. So that way we can like, figure out like how to make this, send it to all the attendees who couldn't make this particular session. And so, yeah, let's get right into it. So Sage is a recent UC Berkeley graduate and the founder of Solutions for a Sustainable Future, which is a student-led course that she has taught to over 600 students. Currently, she's training her interns to teach the course and is employed by the environmental nonprofit, The Story of Stuff Project. So please join me in welcoming Sage Lenier, activist and student professor. Take it away, Sage.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you. It was a very, so interesting to hear things phrased that way, with what a disaster this year has been. It's like, oh, she graduated and then she got a job, but like it really didn't go that way, So hi, everyone. I'm Sage. Two things. One, there is a lawnmower that keeps going on and off at my house, so let me know if you can't hear me at some point. And two, I've decided to start doing these things like relatively unscripted, so I'm gonna have probably a lot of ums and like some backtracking and stuff, but just like, roll with it because it's more fun when I'm not like reading off a pre-prepared script, So teaching zero-waste systems thinking. So in order for us to talk about that, I want to give a bit of a background as to what this course is and how this started and stuff. I'm not even percent, that's fine. So basically, that's a photo of baby Sage at like, I think I was 19. So basically, UC Berkeley has this program called the DECAL program that allows students to teach to their peers. And it's a very, very unique program. It's been around since like, oh man, I don't know, the 70s, the 80s, I should know, I don't. It's the 60s, it's been around since the 60s. Don't quote me on that. Basically, you can teach, it's democratic education at Cal, DECAL. So you can pick any topic and teach it to your peers, and whoever wants to take it signs up and they get units for it. And there's courses on like knitting, there's courses on Kanye West, there's courses on like anthropozoobiology, there's like really intense Chinese medicine classes. So really they can be anything the student has an interest in, and they can be academic or they can be fun, etc. The most popular of these decals are like 50 people, 50 students, and they'll usually have like 6 facilitators at that point, like facilitators being the students who teach them. But I did something that hadn't ever been done with the DECAL program, and that's what makes this course very unique and very, like it was very different, and kind of changed the shape of our campus a little bit. So my first semester started out with 25 students, and I began this course, and I'll tell you why in a second, but I began this course my second semester of sophomore year. And then the next semester, I was like, I want 50. The third semester, I had a really big wait list the semester before, and I was going for a really ambitious 85. And they were like, you can't do that. That's not a thing. And I was like, please just give me the room. I promise it'll work. So I got 85. Then I was going for 75, but they gave me 85, and I had 85 students. And then the fourth semester was the first time we broke the record for the largest student-led course at Berkeley. And that was 160 students. And that's where we started getting some really cool press coverage that I could talk about as well. And then the fifth, my final semester this spring, which finished obviously online, I had 300 students in a class, which was crazy. So that's my first semester teaching. Here's my last. There's my classroom. It was like one of the biggest, or my favorite like lecture halls on campus. It was really exciting. So you're probably sitting here and you're like, okay, what were you teaching that so many people were interested in? Well, first of all, I began this course for a couple of reasons. First of all, I really, really, really I was thinking like, I would love to teach a decal. I feel like I have a lot of knowledge that isn't in popular environmental academia, There's a lot of things that we as young folk like have conversations about on social media all the time that our professors don't, bring into our classes, or our high school teachers, etc. And second of all, like the real impetus for this was I had a real frustration with my courses at Cal. I was, UC Berkeley has it's ranked one of the highest top environmental programs in the nation, in the world. But unfortunately, I felt like all of my courses were so dry. They were being taught by these really old, usually white men who somehow managed to make the world's most important issues sound clinical and distant and boring. And they were also really problem focused. And that's where I had a problem. These courses, like my peers, my classmates, myself included, were starting to feel really depressed, and we didn't want to give up on our academic track, on our career track, because we felt like this was such important work. But it was so, it was so heavy all the time to walk out of lecture after lecture after lecture that was like doomsday, 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 climate change, the world's ending. Here, read this very long study that I participated in about how the world's going to end. And I was like, yo, like I'm halfway through my environmental education at like my undergraduate education, and I still don't really know what we're supposed to be doing about these problems. Maybe like 1 week at the end of my class about food systems, they talked about like, oh yeah, so like what we need to do is switch like organic and like hydroponics and like agroecology and polyculture, but like that stuff would be really hard to do. Anyways, and I was like, yo, wait, can you talk about that a little more? So, what I basically set out to do was create an a mini tiny version of everything you need to know about the planet. And I kept that, like I had a piece of paper above my desk that said everything you need to know about the planet 101 to constantly remind myself that that's what I was trying to build. And I kind of went through all of these different topics and explained them in lay terms. And so we start out with, fundamentally, the course used to be called Zero Waste, and then it was Zero Waste Solutions for a Sustainable Future, but that's a mouthful. So now it's Solutions for a Sustainable Future. But the entire thing is based on the principle of zero waste systems thinking. So we begin with this kind of exploration of how the concept of waste, and not necessarily the concept of waste, but the concept of goods or the concept of resources as consumables began out of neoliberal capitalism and just like the things that changed with the deregulation of capitalism, and how that is the root cause of climate change. I was like, yes, it's fossil fuels, but more so it's consumerism, right? Like fossil fuels being the means to climate change, but consumerism being the vehicle, like the vehicle that's driving that. And people are kind of like, I never really thought about that. And then you kind of break down like our global greenhouse gas emissions, and you're like, look, like most of our emissions are coming from they're coming from meat consumption and deforestation. They're coming from transportation of us and all the stuff we're buying. They're coming from production industry of all the stuff we're buying. It's the root cause of a lot of our greenhouse gas emissions. So we kind of set out on that foot of like consumerism is the thing that we're going to be studying very closely here. And from there we go in a lot of different directions. We talk about waste streams. So the next week after that first week is this very simple, like, what is a landfill? What is composting? What is recycling? And everyone's like, whoa. And that one's always like just mind blowing because people are like, I mean, I know that everybody here is like, recycling's not real. But a lot of my students, about half from what I surveyed, are non-environmental majors, which is cool because you're starting this conversation in a very interdisciplinary, like intersectional way. And from there on out, we kind of go into a lot of different angles. We follow cradle to cradle design, like how do we redesign our goods? And then we kind of scale up. We talk about like an individual product, and then we talk about like systems. So we go into circular economy, we go into sustainable cities. What do circular cities and like living spaces and communities look like? And then we kind of shift gears into food systems. There's a 3-week unit on industrialized food systems. So first of all, we talk about agriculture, and the entire way I make it as solutions forward as possible so that you're never leaving the classroom feeling like, oh man, the world's so, you're kind of like, wow, like that's cool. Like I didn't know that we could do that. Like, why aren't we doing that? Like, how do I And I've had a lot of students say that like they, I mean, the impact is very clear because I've had a lot of students say that they, change their majors because of the course, or switch to like an environmental emphasis of their major, like chemistry majors or architecture. They're like, wow, I really want to do green chemistry, green architecture. And I was like, I love that. Like, keep me updated. Um, so we kind of follow that way. So we do food systems, we have industrialized food systems, and then we have a week on that. And then we have a week after that about food justice. Hang on. I actually have them over here. I don't know why I wasn't looking at them. All right. So we have food politics when we talk about who is allowed to eat what in terms of affordability in America, who decides what is allowed to be put on the plate in terms of policy and legislation and all that kind of like up higher level stuff that really ultimately decides what's in our grocery stores for us to choose from. And who picks your food, where does your food come from, the ethics of the food system. And then we have oceans and food ethics, which is essentially, it is a complete argument for a plant-based diet. I had never seen one done before, where you kind of go through all of the environmental, mostly environmental, but then also a little bit of like ethical reasons, including human ethics, like the humans who work in slaughterhouses and whatnot, reasons for a plant-based diet. I would never make any kind of prescription. Really, ultimately, the argument is that like the amount of meat that Americans eat, given how many people we have on the planet now, is unethical for many reasons, and we have to eat less, right? Like I'm like not trying to make any prescriptions there. And then we have a lecture on climate change that is now actually, I rewrote it really last minute last semester to be climate change and coronavirus, because I feel like the way that we're dealing with this not micro, but like if you understand what I'm saying, like in terms of how fast it happened, like extremely fast, and then like the fact that it has a deadline, like a vaccine, like it's kind of a micro global crisis in that it's like compacted in a very short span of time, whereas climate change is this much longer. But the way that we're dealing with this really has a lot of lessons for how we will or are equipped to deal with climate change, these kinds of things. So I think that the argument around coronavirus is like, or the conversation on coronavirus is forever going to shape that we talk about climate change by being like, well, you got out these stimulus packages, or like these governments did this, and like they had the resources to react to climate change earlier, like et cetera, et cetera. Interesting stuff. And then my favorite lecture is decarbonization, where we actually talk about solutions to climate change, because I don't feel like we have that conversation enough. I don't think most of us have a really robust understanding of the solutions. We're kind of just like, I mean, even myself, before I like went to like, I took 3 different energy courses in different parts of the university. I took it in the business school, I took it in the politics side, and then I took it in the actual energy, like engineering side, and had to go to 3 different places, 3 different disciplines in the university to have a robust enough understanding of what decarbonization looks like and what the solutions are ranked, right? Like how much can reforestation help? How much can limiting our population without eugenics, right? Like just by giving people more birth control, not by trying to control, like not that way, but just giving people the right to choose, the ability to choose how many and how and when they want to have kids, right? How much can like carbon, like technological sequestration help? How much can soil restoration help? How much can, oh man, there's a 4th one. How much can like cutting back on energy demand and meat consumption and goods consumption, like how much can these things help? And kind of formulating that into one whole argument. That was my favorite thing. It was a huge task for me, like to create that argument. So in total, you have this curriculum that kind of goes through a wide variety of environmental topics. In my opinion, it covers all the ones that need to be covered. I think other people would obviously like craft it differently, but this is just like from my brain, this is what I felt like I wanted everyone to know. Not that like I'm the be all ultimate authority. It's just like I can only create from my own brain, right? From my own perspective. So you're going through all of this and kind of thinking about like zero waste or closed looped or just sustainable systems thinking. And it's fun because it's actionable, it's accessible. I try to use, lay terms at all times, like never any technological or like big clunky words. You take out all the math. Um, you add in, a bunch of 20-year-old instructors who accidentally like drop F-bombs all the time and like make you laugh during class. So it's engaging. And ultimately, from student feedback, what we've heard, me and my teaching team has been that it's a really impactful class. My goal for this year, so at this time, was to be taking the course to other places. Obviously, it's not happening because the world is on pause right now. But I'm really passionate about this work, and my goals right now, I'm kind of in a resting period, but my goals are to, at some point in the near future, be turning it into a book, and also to eventually be taking this course to other schools, hopefully high schools, hopefully colleges, hopefully making it available on like other platforms and online and things like that. Um, I think that it's education that should be easily accessible, and it's atrocious that I had to go to so many different places to find this information. So for me, it's important to continue to have these conversations and continue to bring this knowledge to other people so that we can, move past these very basic, very surface level conversations. Like you should have a basic understanding of how the food system in the United States works so that we can move past that, right? Like this is supposed to be an introduction. And we want everyone to have the same base level of knowledge that's being withheld from them so that we can all move forward in these conversations and in our solutions thinking. Um, a couple of other things, I guess, just like one thing that was also really cool about the way we crafted the course was that we also did resources, as we plugged our students with as many resources in the Bay Area or in California or digitally as we possibly could. We have that whole food page you see like on this slide right here. This food page is about getting our students access to food more affordably, more sustainably, and more healthfully. So like we source them to like the UC Berkeley Food Pantry and the City of Berkeley Food Pantry. And we plugged, Bea Johnson's waste app. It's not an app anymore, it's a website where you can find grocery stores that are doing like waste-free things. Literally any food related resource that I could find that would help people, I plugged them with the food stamps website for the state of California, anything I could find that would allow people, better access. So I can definitely drop the URL afterwards if you guys are interested in thinking about and taking a look. But anything with, textbooks, transportation, getting clothing and goods more sustainably, affordably, healthily, equitably. We talk about toxicity when we talk about cradle to cradle design. So, people are like, oh, like, how do I get like personal care products that are clean? So we've got resources on getting involved in the Bay, in California, online, at Berkeley, trying to just like bring them into a community. I was lucky to go to a school with a really robust environmental community and like saw a lot of my students like in movement after that. And like I was hanging out at like the eco space and like my students were coming in like, hi Sage, I don't know if you know me, but I'm in your class, and like because of your class, like I'm joining this team, I'm so excited, we're about to have our first meeting, and I'd be like, good, have fun, like I'm so excited for you, tell me how it is afterwards, I'll be out here doing my homework. And that always like made me so stoked. So yeah, I have like, that's a little screenshot of like our first module overview. We start off with, a chronological introduction, how we as a planet and people arrived to the issue of waste, emergence of plastic, da 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 da. The course is extremely environmental justice centered. I didn't feel the need to have an EJ lecture because the entire thing is human focused. I am at my core more interested in human rights than like environment for the environment's sake, right? Like the whole like we are fighting for our lives. This isn't about trees or polar bears. This is so much about us. So we work the human impacts of all of these things that we're talking about into every lecture, and it's an ongoing conversation. But we also do have an environmental justice highlight at the end of every single lecture, so that they can like really kind of, we can like exactly pinpoint like, here are the human impacts of our conversation this week. Here's how you can, resources and whatnot. And yeah, I feel like that's what I had to say. Um, this was just another picture. This was my 160-person lecture. That was my 4th semester teaching as the beginning of senior year. And then after this, we had a bunch of really cool press. We had a small feature with the New York Times, but I'm like gonna ride that for a long time. And we had a bunch of different like local Bay Area outlets pick it up, and we had, I feel like there was something else that was like kind of large, but we were going to have a bit of coverage of the World Economic Forum that was going to be big. They got canceled in March because of Corona. Rip to that. But yeah, it was very exciting, very fun. My favorite thing.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Sage, for your presentation. I think we can move into more of like a Q&A type of style um, discussion. And so, yeah, I wanted to ask just real quick, what are some of the major insights you learned from the process of designing this course?
Major insights. That's a good question. I feel like, I guess for me, like surface level thinking, what comes to mind is really how gate kept environmental like solutions thinking is, was like the biggest thing that I learned, and like the biggest thing that I'm like working against now. And I also just had a really good, I think, holistic look at the environmental movement by going through so many different parts of the university, and by just studying the existing environmental models so much. And it just kind of gave me hope in that environmentalism is so Gen X, it's so millennial, it's so white, it's so individual lifestyle focused. And I was like, this is why the environmental movement is still a very much a skeleton frame. But if we had a like robust, like a whole population of young people who had a solutions, like we're on fire, like this generation, like we're always like we're going. This is a really, really intense moment for our generation. And like if all of us had a really robust like understanding of these things, I think that we would go really far, really fast. And so instead of letting that like depress me, I was like, wow, things are going to change so much as soon as we are more educated. Just because like right now it's in the hands of some white, more wealthy, older folks who just don't have our best interests at heart, I wouldn't say. And like no shade at all to like the zero waste community, but like I'm sure you all have noticed that like a lot of when you go on Instagram, you see like these really pretty like white aesthetic um Instagram feeds that are like, here are my plants and here's my $20 soap. And I'm just kind of like, okay, cool, can't relate. Um and so like as we kind of move in and make it this like more like um more radical zero waste, I would say it's exciting. It's exciting.
Nice. So actually, I actually wanted to touch a little bit more on that. You mentioned in passing why individual lifestyle change isn't enough. Could you expand a little bit more about that for audience members who might not have, the background or context?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's both. You're never going to be able to get there, one way or the other. Yes, it's true that consumer choices push corporate interests, but I think a lot of us have kind of come to the conclusion that's like, well, at this like throw the whole damn system away, like the corporate interests. It's kind of that moment between like reform and abolition. I'm more of an abolitionist. Some of you might be reformists, and we can meet in the middle, I'm sure. But at this point, I'm looking at the corporations who are driving our consumer, the corporations who have so much control over the consumer interests or options that we have. I'm like, I don't want you. Um, so I would say that individual action isn't enough just because there's this system that's giving us options. It's like I can pick A, B, or C, but ultimately I don't think that the entity who's offering me A, B, and C is ethical and going to offer me fully ethical options. So I would rather get rid of that whole thing, the whole system, because I don't want any of these. So I would say, like harm reduction is always great to the extent of like immediacy. We do need we should make the individual choices that we can right now because we have to reduce the harms and as we're on the way to like entire system rebuilding.
Wow, that was a great answer. So my take on it is that corporations are in control of much of the individual consumer choices we make, and we don't need that. I love it. So there are a couple of questions asking about the class. Are you thinking of making online classes? It seems like there's a lot of need to get this information out, and you having like access to like all these different interdisciplinary perspectives. um yeah, are there any plans to make this an online course? I think while there is COVID and like we can't make individual classes, there is a lot of opportunity to do stuff like this. So yeah, any thoughts on that?
So right now, my girls, my TAs, I call them my girls, um, are teaching it online to I think they have 50 students this semester, which is more than I expected for online school because everyone has a little Zoom burnout. Um, and they're like halfway through the semester. But honestly, if any of you are interested in like hopping in, I think we're on food systems, maybe. Yes, we're on food systems. I'd be happy to give you guys the information. You can hop in. Alternatively, you could start with us next semester and just kind of like audit the courses, or you could browse around on the website and just kind of gain what you want from the website. I'd be happy to let anyone and everyone who is interested join. I don't really have a method of advertising it. Like I would love to have just like thousands of people from all over the world like joining into these online classes. I don't really have the ability to advertise it that way, but now that I'm thinking about it, like I kind of could. I could at least try. I could like give it a shot with Instagram or something, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. One of our other questions that was similar, it was in the similar type of vein, is like, would you be open and interested to talk to high school green club / leadership environmental classes? Um, I know there's some folks in the room who are actually like really big on environmental education and have done actually probably decades of work in that space. So yeah, there's definitely very interested people like right here. Ruth Abbey, Nancy Deming are some examples. Just major shout out like from former colleagues and stuff. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
um, I am not doing a ton of talks right now. I'm in like a point of my life of just like resting and like taking space. This is the second one I've done over Zoom. And it's taken me this long, like since March, to like want to do them. Because I did the last one like 2 weeks ago. So I would say I would be happy to like look over your idea, like what it is that you would like to have a conversation, to have a talk, how many people it was, and then most likely have one of my teaching team girls like move in with that. But I'm definitely open and interested. It's just that like I'm really in I'm really taking space right now.
Mhm. There's a lot of hype in the chat. A lot of people would love to take this class.
Oh,
So
that's
another question. Oh, sorry. Uh-huh.
Oh, I just said, oh my gosh, so fun.
Yeah. So another question that somebody has is, I was wondering, what is the best way to achieve zero waste? And if that is the use of compostables, recycling, reusables, or is it a mix? What's your take?
It's totally a mix. And another thing that I'm learning to do is I call it, and it probably sounds like a harsh thing, but this is what I call it. I call it minding my own business and not acting like I'm an authority on things. So here is my personal answer to that. But like, I am not. I'm 22, just like the rest of y'all. I think it's definitely going to be achieved through a mix. I think that reusables are a much more viable option than we give them credit for. But the city of Berkeley has a really cool plan that they put out that I was stoked on about having, like, they have these really, really, really robust, ambitious, I think it was the most ambitious like city plan in the United States so far, for zero waste. And it has a lot to do with mandating reusables at restaurants and putting like little fees on cups and things like takeout cups and things like that to like incentivize people to bring their own, etc. And then there's also this program called Vessel that you guys should look up. That's so fun. It's just Vessel, and they're in like Colorado and in Berkeley. Oh, that was private. Sorry. Vessel. So they're in Colorado and they're Berkeley, and it's like a coffee cup system where you can like pick it up and drop it off, and they'll like drop and they will clean it and then return it to the, I don't know, you can pick it up and drop it off at like any location in the city. And so like I can like take my coffee in the morning and then like drop it off at like a cafe like a mile away. And so I think if we start getting into more of these like design systems that are just like more user friendly and more like livable, so I don't have to like lug my coffee cup around all day, we can get into more, we can like look a lot closer at zero waste. But like as always, zero waste is a goal. You know, a lot of the materials in our society are not easy to replace, but like if you're interested in learning more about like reaching true zero waste, I would really recommend creative design, because that's like the systems thinking of like how do we tear apart our products and make them more into like either can be returned into the industrial cycle or the biological cycle of being composted.
Great. Yeah, so another question we got, I don't know if you've heard of this. Yale has a class called it's like on happiness. It's like a psychology class. And I think it's about positive psychology, and it's I think the most popular course at Yale. And they put it online for free on Coursera. So literally anyone can take this class. And it's like a series of like modules. I actually kind of like tried to do it a little bit. It's a really good class. Would UC Berkeley consider doing something like this for your class?
You see, the thing is that UC Berkeley loves to tout their students' successes, but then not back them up at all or give them any reasons to getting there. I can like honestly say that the administration of Berkeley was a pain in my ass and tried to stop me from doing this in a million ways. And then once I got into the news for it, they were like, oh, look at our girl. And they like posted me on their Instagram and made a news story about me on their personal news channels and stuff, and then left me alone and never said anything about it again. So the answer, unfortunately, is no, because they're not very good at resourcing their students.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can definitely attest to the gatekeeping of UC Berkeley as an alum as well. I'm sorry to say, but yeah, and yes, the class is called The Science of Wellbeing, and apparently 3 million people have now taken it. So one person is suggesting maybe like if you were open to it, like, you know, and it sounds like it's in your plans, like with the book but yeah, like maybe creating your own platform to teach like zero waste solutions could be a possibility.
I would love to.
Oh, and there's Ruth Abbey. So Ruth Abbey is part of Zero Waste USA. I think one of the founders, and she's in the room in the chat, and you know, is open to having them like offer that platform if you were open to it, to make this class a possibility.
Oh, are you serious about this? Because I'm really
Yeah,
down.
Ruth is right there in the chat. So yeah.
Okay, can we talk about that further? That would be fantastic. I would love to do that. That
Ruth,
is so exciting. Yeah.
can you
Wow.
talk a little bit more about what you mean?
Oh, just that, you know, we teach online classes already. And, you know, right now these Zoom, via Zoom to folks all over the world. And so, right now our room is able to contain 500 people, but you can up that with Zoom if there's enough demand. So, I think it's a great idea to get your message out there beyond the UC Berkeley students who were lucky enough to take your class. And, if you want to have us work with your TAs or whomever, I mean, we should get it out there, man. It's awesome.
I would love to. I would love to.
Cool.
I'm so excited about that idea.
Yeah, so Zero Waste USA is our parent, kind of thing, like Zero Waste Youth. So yeah, that they're sharing their account with us. So that's how we were able to do a lot of this. I mean, we're doing 4 accounts for this current session time.
Right.
And so yeah, that would be really, really great to do. So definitely, what's the best way to connect?
Email. Yeah, let's do that. Yay! Everybody's witnessing this right now.
And is it okay if we share? Are you still on Instagram? Are you still active on there?
I deactivated my Instagram for a while. I see that people are saying they would like to see my Instagram, so I will reactivate it for you guys. I'm not sure how long it'll stay up, but I'll be back on Instagram at some point. I just, like I said, I was just kind of taking space, and a lot of what I've been doing is kind of just questioning why I think I deserve, or what makes me give the authority to teach people things and to educate them and shape their minds. So I've been really taking a step back and getting better, getting further deeper into the literature, and just giving myself a more robust understanding of these things, because I was kind of I just would I would like to be a little more grounded before I'm trying to tell people what to do. So I deactivated my Instagram in the meantime, because I was I don't have anything to say.
Totally. Okay, so yeah, I highly recommend connecting with Ruth. I don't know if you all want to connect separately, or if you want me to connect, because I know Ruth and others. So yeah, one of the questions we got is, how do we get into your TA's classes? I guess, are you a Berkeley student, Isabel? Is that what it is?
So I don't I'm not sure. Do I have the ability to contact the people who are here and send them a little follow-up email or something, so I can send them my let me see. Here we go. Let me at least do this in the chat. I'll give you guys the course website, and you can have, I think that my contact email is on there. If not, it's one of my TAs, and you can just write them an email and be like, hey, this is what I'm, oh, why is it not going? I attended this talk with Sage, and she's, she said that people are welcome to the class. How do I get in? And they'll set you up with the Zoom link and stuff. And we wouldn't be able to add you to the course website, the internal one, because I think you need a Berkeley email for it, which is so gatekeeping and so stupid. But we pretty much keep everything on the website itself, except for announcements about homework and things like that. And obviously you don't have to do homework if you're not enrolled. So hopefully they don't unexpectedly cancel class or something and you don't have a way of finding out. But yeah, most all the info is on the course website, and we have I think, can you guys see my screen still?
Yeah, actually, I was gonna ask you if you could do this. Would you be able to walk us through?
Yeah, what part do you want to see the most?
I'll defer to the audience.
You guys want to see lectures, or would you rather see the resource pages?
I'm inviting all the audience to either turn on their mics or type in the chat, or yeah, however you want to interact. I think we can make it a little bit more interactive now. Okay, people are interested in the lectures. Seems like.
All right, let's take a look at sustainable cities. I feel like we don't talk about that enough, and it's one of my favorite subjects. So we start off with module overviews, and usually just a quick graphic to kind of introduce the topic. So I don't know how I can push this out. No, I can't So I've got, the way our cities are presently designed is energy and resource inefficient. At the same time, city dwellers have actually a lower per capita carbon footprint than their suburban counterparts. So that's a really interesting thing. Basically, people who live in bigger houses use more energy to heat them, and then they own more stuff to fill them. Like they have random sitting rooms and extra living rooms and stuff that they'll buy furniture specifically to fill when they don't need it. And then, so they're using more energy to like heat this house, to cool it, etc. And then they have to like drive longer distances and whatnot. So even though, and this is one of my favorite components of this lecture, even though people think of New York City as like this super nasty, and it is very consumeristic, I'm not gonna lie about that. This super nasty, like bad for the planet, like terrible thing. New York City, folks in New York City actually have a lower carbon footprint than people in Vermont, which is one of the most sustainable, forward-thinking cities or states, because people in Vermont use a lot more gas. They have bigger houses. They have a tendency to own more stuff than you can in a cramped, tiny apartment. And what was the last part? And per capita, they take up way more land, way more space per person, right? So it's actually really interesting that it's more sustainable to live in a city than a suburb or rural area in terms of density. We have a lot of people on the planet. So we talk about that. How do we build our cities to be more sustainable? Because we are, environmental is spelled wrong there. That's so funny. The way we build our cities, we can create regenerative solutions within cities. So we're talking about like that they are not sustainable. I don't think that you all will be able to see the lesson plans. I've restricted access because it's like my intellectual property wise. Like I don't think this course has a large enough reach for someone to not be able to steal my ideas and turn it into a book really quickly and like publish it. And then I'd be like, hey, that was my first. And they were like, no proof. So I restrict the access to the lesson plans themselves until I can like have just more of a claim to these ideas that I came up with. So that you can see the slides though. So you can see which state is greener, Vermont or New York City, and we talk about how much we hate suburbs and how ugly the United States is. In my opinion, I think it's atrocious. You can disagree with me on that. I'm okay with that. So are cities sustainable? No. How do we get there? Just fun. Homework, there are usually like videos and quick articles. I try to keep it like engaging, stuff that's super simple. And then anything that I don't want to assign for homework, but that really had a big impact on me. And these can be readings from the classes I've taken, or videos, or just like, things I can't assign for homework because it's too much. Talk about gentrification there. We talk about this documentary called The Garden that was something that was done like by a bunch of mostly immigrants, Latinx people in Los Angeles who created like a community garden, and it was just really great for their community. And they grew a lot of food there, and then they got bulldozed, unfortunately. And it was just like I wanted to have a conversation about power dynamics in this one, power dynamics and like who ultimately decides who's allowed to have access to what. Plant Chicago, one of the favorite things we talk about it. So then some TED Talks. Berkeley Spotlight, we try to connect people with our community as much as possible. So we're talking about the Edible Schoolyard, BSAC, Sustainable Housing at California Ecology Center. And then we have an environmental justice highlight. And we're talking about environmental racism here and how it impacts like gentrification and redlining and, like Black neighborhoods and poor neighborhoods being just like disproportionately in bad areas or just like toxic areas, etc. So that's like an average like lectures page. The Garden is such a great documentary. It makes you cry. It makes you cry.
Yeah. So, we actually got another follow-up question. Is there an approach you found through your courses that could get people who are resistant to taking a zero waste approach to living more open to the idea?
I would say yes and no. I've had a lot of students go a lot of students who had like a mild interest in the environment, but no like personal actions that aligned with that, and no really education on it, become pretty interested in it. And I've also heard from a lot of them that they got their parents or families or communities or friends to go along with things. And I've never really inquired as to how. I think it was just a matter of sitting down and having a conversation and being like, we could make these simple changes and it would save us money, or it would not be that much time, and it would help. And I've heard that happening a lot. There are always a couple of resistors, like inevitably, because, you know, unfortunately, people who sign up for my class are self-selecting. So I don't get like a completely objective audience of like some folks who are not interested. But every semester, for some reason, I get one or two people who don't want to be there and who argue with me on every single point. And that's always good for me. That's always good to have, like, people who are just unimpressed and like, well, I think that's dumb. And I'm like, huh, tell me why. But I don't think I've really found any like good, solid tips and tricks. Nope, you know what? I have one, and I know we're short on time right now, so I'll say it really quickly. I did this once with a couple of Uber drivers. I basically convinced them that conserving and reusing was an American value. I was like, yeah, like remember like in the 70s when like everyone carried, like in the 60s when everyone had their own like handkerchief and stuff, and there's none of this like plastic, like the cheap new times. Like I just hate that. And they were like, yeah, I mean, when I grew up, like we didn't have any of that. Like we didn't, like, because this Uber driver had like a bunch of like he had a like a cup, like a soda cup in his, and then a bunch of paper napkins, and he was like, we didn't have any of that when I grew up, like the traditional ways, da 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 da. And I was like, I know, man. Honestly, for me, I'm more of a classic girl, and like I just feel like it's sad that it's become the American way to be like obsessed with convenience and disposability. Like, to me, I'm more interested in saving our beautiful America. And he was like, you're darn right. And I was like, you have a good day, sir. Stop using paper napkins.
Well done. Well done. Yeah, so that actually brings us to the end. We have about a minute left. That was a really brilliant response, but I definitely think bringing it to the community is such an important thing. And I feel like a lot of what you mentioned, like with Berkeley professors, like it's just like a lot of this knowledge just stays in the academy and it doesn't really get a chance to like get out there, even though that's what's really needed to get people to change their behaviors and to empower people on a basic level. So yeah, I want to thank you again for coming. Are there any last questions or any last statements you'd like to make, Sage?
I would just, okay, so like I this is just the one note that I always like to end on. Be extremely critical of everyone you look up to in the environmental movement, and every movement. Like, kill your idols all the time. Criticize me, criticize everyone, question them, press them. Do not ever put anyone on a pedestal, because you should just always be asking questions. It's not super related to the talk, but it's something I feel the need to say. So there's my Instagram it's at Sage Lenier. I just reactivated for you guys. You can DM me, you can ask questions. I know a couple of people said that they wanted to get involved. There's my email as well. You can contact me. The website was already linked above. So hopefully you guys can grab that before the session ends. And Ruth, I will be emailing you because that sounds really exciting. And hopefully you guys will see something about a little collab between ZWY USA and the decal.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this session. We'll be seeing you shortly at the closing remarks. We definitely compressed. We used to go till 4 p.m., but now we're like, okay, we can compress the schedule and add more sessions. So that's what happened. And I think it turned out pretty good because it's like 20, 30 people is a reasonable size to really get to connect to each other. So super grateful for all the audience contributions and mega grateful to Sage. Thank you for coming through and look forward to the collaboration.
So patient, you're not getting my slides to you.
All right, y'all.